Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.
Hello, welcome to the RTÉ GAA Podcast. Mikey Stafford here with Rory O'Neill, and we've been joined by Kevin McStay and Michael Foley to celebrate the end of the famine. We tend to get two Corkmen on, well, Rory's always on, he hasn't got a choice, but we tend to drag Mick in after big Kerry performances. We don't like you very much, Mick, do we?
Clearly. This is a cruel and unusual punishment.
Bad enough you had to record that lovely monologue for the Sunday game evening show last night, where you had to praise the history of football's aristocrats, and now we get you on to do it some more here. Now they'll be wondering, your neighbours going to start wondering about you, Mick.
I know. There will be questions asked. The postman will arrive. The mail won't be handed at all. It'll be fecked at the front door.
It was a gorgeous piece, Mick. Well done, by the way. It was really nice, really lovely piece.
It was very nice. It was, as Kerry huggers go, you're one of the more eloquent ones, Mick.
Lord. No. You can't deny it. You can't deny, to be fair to Kerry, and if you win 38 All Irelands, you're going to win them in a variety of different ways down the years, and of how Kerry always, down the years, they found ways to win. Maybe, it's not all, people have this notion that it's all, sweetness and light and flowing football in Brazil 1970 all the time.
Brazil's a great example, because Brazil have won so many of their World Cups in a very ugly manner, but everyone thinks it's always, 82 or 70, but it's not. It's often 1994.
Absolutely.
And that's what it was yesterday, Kev. I think if you take away the virtuoso performance of David Clifford, which you can't, I'm not saying take it away, but other than that, I was describing it. It was the All Ireland final for the water carriers to an extent. I thought Stephen O'Brien was out of this world for as long as he lasted, and he's known as kind of the hard-working Kerry forward, but I thought he was as influential in the first half as anyone. And then you have the likes, obviously, like Graham O'Sullivan, without Clifford playing the way he played, probably could have been a good shout for man of the match. And, you go through the defence and Tyke Morley and Jason Foley, and Clifford was the match winner, but he wouldn't have been able to win any match if it was the guys, the kind of nuts and bolts guys for Kerry, who didn't play as well as they played yesterday.
He made a fair stab at it of winning it on his own, and I take your point of all the smaller characters adding to the story yesterday, if we want to put it that way. But it's impossible to separate, I think, the performance of David Clifford and Shane Walsh from the story of the 2022 final. It got to a level that was, well, in my memory, unparalleled. There was a stage where it was just a magnificent spectacle, pretty much between the two of them, and I do take it that the hod carriers were definitely giving it a great shot as well, and they're doing what they could for them. But the brilliance, the class, the Socrates, the Pele, they were at either end of the field, and I just found it to be a magnificent final. I really, really enjoyed it. Obviously, I was co-com, and we were very invested in the action, and it was swinging one way and the other. And then it came to that, the crescendo really of the 4 point splash by Kerry. Galway pull it back, go 2 ahead, and back come Kerry again with another flash flood of magnificent points. And I just found the whole thing so appealing. I really, really enjoyed it. And sometimes we come away from these commentaries and you're not fully satisfied with what you've seen, on these big days that tend not to deliver. I enjoyed every minute of the final yesterday, lads. I thought it was from start. And Galway played, obviously, a major, and Galway had they had it on the cusp, being no doubt about that free under the vertex of the hill and the Cusack. I've no doubt we'll talk about it. I was here in the Crow Park last night with Jim McGuinness, who took a different viewpoint to my own, and we were the two of us were standing up and we were taking positions, and I was putting in the hand and taking it out, and we were trying to talk through a few friends about why it was a free or why it wasn't. And so it was a critical call. So that's how close Galway were, fellas. I'm sure you'll agree that a point either way, that big turnover, if it had stayed with Galway and they got it up the field, it was a huge moment around the 66th minute, I think. So yeah, I suppose it just a great final, and just a magnificent spectacle. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, Rory. Before we get on to the match proper, I do have to ask you, as former editor of the Sunday Game Nighttime Show, and you've been that soldier many times for the after an All Ireland final. Has it ever happened? Is it ever considered that a player from the losing team could win man of the match? Because to my mind, I know he kicked a couple of wides with the match in the melting pot yesterday, but to me, I thought Shane Walsh was the outstanding individual performer yesterday. But I also knew he was never ever going to get man of the match, because it wouldn't have made very good TV. Or might
I asked
be very
for a joint one, Mikey. I had said it to you, Rory, at the OB afterwards, and I don't think we've ever done that either. Just to throw that into the mix.
Yeah.
I said, why not have a joint one? Because obviously you have the team hotel and the letdown if the man of the match is in the other house.
Yeah.
I don't. Was there one of the Cork Meath finals back in the 80s where a losing player ended up at man of the match? Obviously, losing players have got man of the match in regular games.
Non-All-Ireland finals.
Non-All-Ireland finals.
Yeah.
None jump out at me. I suppose the most controversial one really was the 2008 final, when they couldn't decide which Kilkenny player was so brilliant, and Brian Cody picked up the award, which caused much rancor, I think, among some people. But I don't recall. And look, like I only saw the highlights back, so I haven't seen the full match. Jesus, some of the points Shane Walsh kicked, my goodness, like. He kicked one.
He had 3 contenders for score the championship yesterday, you could say.
His first one into the hill. During the first one into the hill with the big bend on it, about 20 meters of bend on it.
But Kevin, like, I think what people don't realize, and how difficult a skill it is, when you're running at the pace that he's running at, to kick the ball on the run at that pace, not slow down. You know, I always remember Paul Flynn, Dublin footballer, and he would always make the point that it's always key, just be pre-strike, just to maybe just slow down just for that fraction of a second, just to give yourself that little bit of steadiness, so you can get the proper contact away. He just kicks on the fly, and moving at the pace that he does, and to be able to make such unbelievably sweet contact with it. I mean, some of the scores, they were just outrageous now. I think just.
But is there any editorial reason not to give a joint, Rory? Is that kind of heavy operational procedures that say no, this does not happen? It's ruled out.
I don't know. I mean, look, if you went down that road, then you might be accused of, look, they fudged it, and like, I suppose you could possibly say that there was a special case to be made for yesterday, given the performance of the two. But look, I wouldn't underestimate. I don't necessarily think David Clifford is undeserving either, you know,
no.
Because I think what you do have to remember, I think anyway, from like just knowing what I know about Kerry football, I mean, think of the pressure that man was under. Like, he's the chosen one. He is in his second All-Ireland final, third if you include a replay. Has he delivered that big statement performance that obviously his talent suggests he's capable of? Yesterday, he certainly did. He pretty much put them, in a forward sense, put them up on his back. And I don't think he's under. I think it was a toss of a coin. And I think if you were maybe to flip it, if it fell for Clifford, I don't think people could have too many arguments either way.
But put it this way: if Galway win the All Ireland, Shane Walsh is man of the match.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, it's I just think, like, Mick, it's a great complaint to have, that you say there were 2 such outstanding displays of forward play yesterday that it's unfair to give, you know, either man has a fair shout. It's, you know, it is a kind of you know, Virginia ham under the arm, crying because you don't have a loaf of bread kind of argument, really, isn't it?
It'll always be. I mean, whoever has won the man of the match, it'll always be remembered as the Clifford-Walsh final. Anyway, and just on that point about losing teams winning man of the match awards, I remember it happened in '93. It happened in the All-Ireland hurling final in '93. Padraic Joyce from Galway won it when they lost to Kilkenny that year. He was superb. He was wing back. I remember the game very well, and I remember his performance actually was amazing that day. But look, there was a point in the first half when almost the two of them almost blended into one. You know, when you were watching, like, Shane Walsh was swerving around and moving and gliding the same way Clifford moves and glides, and the two of them were doing the small little solos and stuff like that, and you were looking, they were just, I think over the course, like I'd really enjoyed watching Shane Walsh over the course of the season. It was funny, like at the Galway game was on a Saturday, so we obviously covered it for the Sunday paper in a big way, and I was really taken with Shane Walsh that day, and I think I was the only person in Ireland who was taken with Shane Walsh that day, because I picked up the papers the following Sunday and Monday, and it was all, he needs to get in the game more, and he needs to do this and do that. I thought that Shane Walsh, up to this point, had done whatever Galway had needed him to do. Of course, he's such a good player that you'd always like to see him more and play more, but I thought against Derry, he really put in a shift without the ball, and I was really, really impressed with him. So it was fabulous just to see him open up his shoulders yesterday now and just remind everybody what an enormous talent, because we're in an era where David Clifford, and it's no surprise, he's such an incredible talent that he has sort of become, the main man in Gaelic football. He is the brightest star in the sky. But lads, like Shane Walsh is an incredible talent as well, and it was just lovely to see on the biggest day of all, the two of them actually absolutely go at it. And what I really liked about Clifford, actually, in the context of Kerry's performance, when Kerry, like in the first half, like you felt like Kerry were hitting all their metrics. Their kick out was fine. Defensively, they were okay. Galway were opening them up a bit, but it was okay. The problem seemed to be up front. They weren't getting a rhythm going or whatever. Clifford called a couple of really important marks for them in the first half, and it was just the presence of mind to do it in the middle of the maelstrom. Just to keep it all down. Over, he's just got quite apart from his skill set. Like he's had an old head on young shoulders already for a couple of years. He's such an impressive.
I think one of the very satisfying. Yeah, one of the very satisfying aspects of the season. And we've seen a lot of different types of football again evolving this season. If you look at the Derry model, but in an overall sense, we're now seeing deep lying defenses, turnover, quick transition, off you go to the races. But most teams at the elite level will match each other, the top 4, top 6. And isn't it still very satisfying, very encouraging that the separator at the highest level remains this marvelous skill? And we're even seeing the hurling, of course, was always so, well, pretty much always so, but skill now is still what it decides where the title is going.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've always had a sense, it's been a conviction I've had for a long, long time, that when you get to Croke Park on All-Ireland final day, it's still forwards will win the All-Ireland. Like if you go back and look at what would be considered historically the pioneers of defensive football in inverted commas, your Tyrones or Armaghs, look at their forward lines that won those All-Irelands. Unbelievable forward lines.
Yeah,
and when you look at the All-Ireland finals, I agree with Kevin as well. Yesterday was such an enjoyable game. It showcased all the good things about, in inverted commas again, modern football. But like, if you look back at All-Ireland finals over the last few years, there's been a couple of not great matches, but by and large, your Dublin Mayo finals, your Dublin Kerry final 2019, last year's final, okay, Mayo didn't perform well, but it was a compelling game in its own way. Like, as you say, at the top level, like the All-Ireland finals are showing that the game is in very, very good health. It's that separation. And again, look, it's like all links in the chain. I'm sure we don't want to go on this road, but when you put mismatched teams together, that's when football gets ruined. That's when football gets ruined, because the weaker team go, well, we're not going to go out and play. And then you have this mess of a match, and it just messed the whole thing up. But the game is in very, very good health, and the All-Ireland finals have repeatedly shown that down the years. And as Kevin says, the fact that finals are still decided by the best forwards, and as long as it's that way, the game will be fine.
Yeah, there's a couple of stats, Roy. The Twitter account GA Stats put out a couple of interesting ones yesterday, which kind of painted a picture of kind of how entertaining a game it was. Galway had the lead 7 times, which equals the record for a losing team. Equals with Mayo in 2017. Mayo in 2017 gets a few mentions here. The teams were level 9 times, which is only beaten.
Mikey, how far back do these stats go now?
I'm not sure.
Like, how can they possibly say that? Like 7 times is the most a losing team has gone ahead. Like, have they gone all the way back to check that out?
I can't speak for them.
I don't know. It's just that's a mad stat. That's just a mad stat.
The teams these are all of a similar ilk. Teams were level 9 times today, which is only beaten by the 2017 final between Dublin and Mayo, where there was 11, and it's level with 82 in 2008. So it definitely goes back to 82. And the sides took the lead on 10 different occasions, Kerry 3 times and Galway 7.
The 1889 final was very.
I knew Kevin would come in. I knew Kevin would have it.
Yeah. It was that was that the one that finished 7-1 to 2 points. Yeah, that one. They were level on.
Got dark during the penalties and they went home.
One team walked off because they had to get the shower banks home. Yeah.
But Rory, the 4-point margin at the end is a little bit cruel, and it's the kind of thing Kerry do, isn't it? They put on that glass that probably doesn't fairly reflect the tightness of the game.
Yeah, and it was 16-all in the 66th minute. Obviously, we can talk about the free, or was it or wasn't it? Fuzzy, but it was an absolute ding dong. I was like that. I couldn't. The lads have said it all. I mean, it was just a brilliant final, and Galway played their part in absolute spades. They should be like very, very, all Galway people should be very proud of what they've brought to the table there yesterday. It just, for me anyway, I just felt like that they ran out of a little bit of juice towards the back end. They probably didn't have the same kind of quality to come off the bench that maybe Kerry had. Obviously, Kerry went to the bench a lot sooner as well, with the 2 Spillans coming on at half time, but from a Galway perspective, yeah, I think that's probably something that they'll need to fix maybe over the winter.
That was the one thing the pundits very much got right in the preview, Rory, that the benches were going to have a significant say, and that meant then advantage Kerry by a distance, because the Galway bench just didn't seem ready for the 2022 championship. And they're still developing.
Yeah. And the other thing from a Galway perspective, I suppose, is, look, in fairness to Jason Foley, he did a fantastic job on Comer, and people can say, look, Comer didn't really fire in the way that he maybe did in the semi-final. The only thing was that if Walsh had even one other guy to pitch in, I think it might have actually given them that little extra nudge. I mean, I was looking at it, they scored 16 points, 13 of which came from Walsh and McDade. So they only got a point
from Johnny Heaney was the only other forward, and he was kind
of, they were obviously look, Walsh, was absolutely outstanding, kicked unbelievable scores, and was, as we said, an absolute certainty for man of the match had Galway won. But I think they just probably needed someone else to pick up the slack at different parts of the game, and then when it got down the stretch, I just thought the legs went from them just that wee bit, and then they didn't have that same impetus off the bench to kind of push on. But I mean, I just thought they were magnificent as well yesterday. Absolutely unbelievable. And it was a brilliant final. We kind of felt in the build-up too that it was going to be a sort of it was kind of a real nostalgia, traditional feel to this. And people were nervous about whether or not it would be cagey. And it probably was to a certain, there were parts of it. But I think the inherent and innate footballing philosophies within the two counties sort of manifested itself. And in the end, that's kind of what we got. We got the game that we were expecting that Kerry and Galway would deliver. And it was just, it was an absolutely fantastic, it was a privilege to be there, and an amazing game of football. And I think, in fairness, overall, the right winners in the end.
Yeah, I think Mick, Galway can't, like, they can see where the issue lay, obviously, and the issue was that there was an over-reliance on one, supremely talented forward. But they've had that all year, but it's not always been Walsh. Yeah. And another day, Conroy might pick up the slack, and another day it might be Comer. There's very rarely in this championship where Galway
Finnerty had played really well in the early rounds of
there was very rarely a game where 3 or 4
didn't have his best day yesterday,
Yeah, they never had more than 2 forwards really on song in a day. And if you'd imagine, if they could have had 5 of their attacking 8 on form in one game, they'd blow anybody away. But it's just that never happened for them, whether it's their style of play or whether it's just the fact that you can't expect everyone to be on form at the same time. They never really had that day where you had all of their top forwards kind of, on song.
It's the sign of an evolving team, really. Like Rob Finnerty had a very good, as Rory just said there, he had a very good first half of the season. And then possibly, the Derry game and the final wasn't quite as prominent as Galway probably would have liked. And, it's a little bit like that sometimes in All-Ireland final days. You need You need a rogue element coming in and kicking 2 or 3 points in play that you possibly didn't see coming. Maybe Killian McDade to some degree. I mean, kicking 4 points in midfield, you know. But like they need a little bit more. Like I've liked the look of Galway since Joyce took over. I've liked the way he's gone about it. No, there's been a lot of kinks in the road and stuff, but you could always sort of see, you could see a good team evolving there. I mean, they're a very, very good unit. All the stuff that we've said already, like the bench is an issue. I mean, when you look at the Kerry bench, they got 2 points out of Killian Spillane as well, which were crucial. And you're just looking at the players who didn't get on, they probably had another 2 or 3 that could have come on. You know, just that would have brought a little energy to it. But that Galway team they're going to be there again next year if they can hold it all together. Just evolve it a little bit more. They know themselves, like you say. Like if they had got 3 of those forwards humming yesterday, Jesus, they probably would have won the thing. Like you know, but
all 6 Kerry starting forward scored.
Yeah, they did. Like, and even at that, Kevin, you could probably say 1 or 2 of them didn't quite play up either. You know.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. Yeah, Paul Gainey was disappointing.
Paul had a tough game, and Shawnee Shea, by his standards, you know, wasn't quite in the game. Diarmuid O'Connor had a different type of game. You know, I thought Paddy Clifford was very, very good in the second half when they needed him to be very good, really good.
Particularly when you consider how anonymous and gravity challenged he was in the first half. Every time he tried to make a move, he seemed to fall over, or nothing stuck. He was just having an absolute mare. So he really did, like his brother. I think he has a similar kind of temperament to his brother.
He got a right bang in the nose as well. It
was a big half time, lads, for Jack O'Connor, because though they were only a point behind, his team, other than David Clifford and 1 or 2 of the defenders we've mentioned, were not playing well. He had a lot of lads that were just not hitting the spots. And he made a very big call. I know David, I only know from hearing it last night at the Players Hotel that David Moore had been ill all week, and that may well be the reason he was taken off, even though he was doing okay. Paul Gainey just had a very average semi-final and just couldn't regain the form, which I thought he would actually for the final. Didn't work. So Jack had big calls to make, and he made them. He wasn't hanging around, for the usual, I'll give you 10 more minutes now, lads. And then
there was a couple of things, though. There was a couple of things, though, that did strike me as odd. I mean, and again, it might be. I did think it was odd that they left Tom O'Sullivan on Shane Walsh for as long as they did. And I know you might make the argument.
So what do you do? He might have taken someone else.
But I did think Graham was playing so well over in the other corner that I was kind of saying, surely they'll just swap them, just see how it goes for 10 minutes even. No, look, the reality is Walsh was unmarkable, so it mightn't have made any difference.
I'll give you my take, Rory, on why. Shane Walsh has explosive pace. And if he goes by you, you won't recover, other than Tom O'Sullivan, who has outrageous pace. And I would imagine that was a big part of the consideration.
Right.
But they knew Walsh was going to score 5, 6, 7 points, something of that, if he hit form. That's my take on it, because like that, I was thinking surely they'll do something. But what, in fairness to them, what they did do was they got a lot of help out defence when Walsh went right, shimmied right off O'Sullivan. The sweeper always walked towards him, so he couldn't get a shot off, and he had to go further right or further lateral.
Probably the fact that the damage was sort of being limited as well. If you had Comer playing a bit better, or one of any other forwards doing a bit of damage, then Kerry might have gone, geez, we need to do something here. But there also, when you look at the list, I mean, the names, everybody else was doing well on their men. They're kind of they don't have many other man markers really. And you'd imagine, as Kevin said, you'd imagine Tom was probably talked through the scenarios during the week like that. Look, this might happen, but you just need to do what you can.
Chances are this guy is going to score a few points.
The other thing as well, though, is
you're limiting. You're not eliminating. You're just limiting.
Exactly. And also the other thing was, I would imagine the Kerry mindset was, we want to get Shane Walsh defending. I'd say that was probably a big thing, because I mean, it was probably for Tom, it's the first game I can think this year anyway. He only had 1 shot on goal. He was hardly up the field.
Yeah.
I would have thought that the Kerry thinking was,
God, he was convinced he'd scored. He wouldn't leave the referee alone about it. Hawkeye's wrong. It was over the bar.
Need to go with them.
yeah. But the other thing, just go back.
I was cleaned out by the production team. Did you see that, Mikey?
Yeah, the replay was emphatic.
And then they put in the behind camera. They let that run in. knowing well what the answer was, and that's Rory O'Neill I have for that.
I was in your ear. You must have turned me off at that stage. you were probably sick of listening to me, but no doubt. But I was, because obviously I see the Hawkeye. I can see the Hawkeye result pretty much instantly. So I knew that it was wide, and just to be safe, we said, well, let's just have a look at that high behind angle, just to make sure this time. I'm not doubting Hawkeye.
I was introducing the right-hand post down at the hill conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
But
it was wide.
It was definitely wide. So I'm glad you mentioned Tom O'Sullivan, Rory, because I do think he deserves a mention, because it's not a match like in All Ireland, his first one, but like he probably, if he wins a couple more, it mightn't be the one he tells the grandkids about. But the fact of the matter is, like, he did stick at it, and Shane Walsh did miss a couple of chances late on that, you know, he wasn't missing earlier, probably because his foot was hanging off after scoring so many glorious points, but also that Tom O'Sullivan stuck at it when, you know, given the, you know, kind of the Gaelic football version of the kamikaze mission. I thought he did acquit himself. He did acquit himself pretty well.
He sure did.
He did. It was
the light. When you shine a light on an All-Ireland medal, it refracts in all sorts of different angles, different ways, right? It's not all one on the final. You don't win an All-Ireland medal just on final day. You have to do an awful lot to get there. And he's a nailed-on all-star. He's had a brilliant year. I wouldn't be saying a bad word about him now over yesterday. Like, no.
Jesus, no. He's
an absolutely stellar defender, that fella.
Yeah,
there's no fear of him.
Well, another thing. Look, I mean, it's totally incidental. And look, does it matter? Maybe it doesn't. It wasn't a dirty stroke in the whole match, which is unusual, really, for an All-Ireland football team.
David Clifford's tackle in the first half now
that was a bit of a one-handed slap.
I think that happens. I wouldn't call that
I thought it was a very clean game. You know, it was physical.
He doesn't know how to tackle.
No, that's the next skill he has to perfect.
It kind of felt to me like a kind of a football version of a hurling final. The referee had kind of decided, they're like, oh, let a bit go here now, because they're not. They're not teams that you really need to kind of clamp down on early doors, more than likely.
They're not going to get carried away,
so there was a couple of saucy tackles at times in the game, but it was never anything. It was in the, you know, there were saucy tackles because the referee hadn't pulled smaller stuff up before. It was no biggie, like, you know. It was grand.
No,
the referee was very good actually yesterday.
I do, and I think the shoulder on Killian McDade wasn't even a free. I didn't think.
Yeah, that could have been let go.
That could have been let go. It was a tremendous shoulder. It was just because there was the other player on the other side. It kind of caused a bit of a buffeting effect, but it was actually just it was a textbook shoulder. It was a hell of a hit, and that and the Clifford tackle in the first half, they're down to the two that stand out. And as you said, neither was particularly
egregious.
So we might as well get on to the one refereeing decision then that is being disputed.
Well, there were two. I would dispute. There you go, Kev. I think, you know, I know Galway have come out, and some Galway people might feel that was a very harsh free, but equally on the flip side, Kerry should have been playing against 14 men possibly for 10 minutes in that second half as well. And, like, you know, in modern Gaelic football, if you're down a man, that's a big opportunity to make some hay, which they weren't given. And I thought it was within the confines and the rules surrounding the black card. It was definitely, you know, heading towards that colour, Kev. I mean, you're better on the rules than I, but
no, I agree with you. I said this pretty much the same in the commentary and in the replay where he's actually pulling him down by the jersey. Now there were poorly judged advances by Conor Gleeson all day nearly. He was wandering from his line when it just wasn't quite the call, I felt. And again, he got caught in the 50-50, it wasn't 50-50, it was 40-60 against him. And that's why the Kerry attacker, you could say, I can't remember who it was now. It
was Killian Spillane.
Killian Spillane might have gone down a little bit easy, and sometimes that happens.
Oh no, sorry, in the black card situation. Yeah, no.
Yeah, you're thinking of the free at the end.
Free.
Yeah, I can't remember who's in the black card one now. Was it Paddy Clifford?
I think it was Paddy Clifford, wasn't it?
Paddy Clifford or Gavin White? It was. I think it was Paddy Clifford. Yeah.
Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Who was in it? It did look deliberate, and that's the key word. And it did look like a pull down. And And there was a bit of a trip as well at the end of it, where a leg flew across.
It's a bit of everything.
And you could say maybe was there a hint of a goal scoring opportunity? I mean, like he had it all.
Geez, I never even thought of that.
He had it all.
Sorry,
he had
it was Killian Spillane actually who he dragged down. It was Killian Spillane in both these incidents.
He had it wrapped up in a bow for at least a black card in my view, and you know he left him off.
Because if he rounds the goalie, it's a goal, isn't it?
And by the way, if the goalkeeper takes a black card, that's too big. That you're possibly into a situation where you've got to make 2 substitutions with a very weak bench. So while these things, you could say, okay, that free was soft, maybe over here, and that's also debatable. No, 2 wrongs, as we say, don't make a right, and 2 incorrect decisions, but they do balance out, I would suggest, to a degree.
Balance out. The other one is a little bit complicated, Kevin, isn't it? It's
Well,
with John Daly and Killian Spillane, because Padraic Walsh's argument, I think, more so than the Daly holding the arm. I don't think he thinks that was a foul, but his point is Comer was pushed before John Daly even got the ball.
I can assure you, because I was doing my column last night. I'm very disciplined when I left Croke Park. And
straight up to do your homework.
I got the homework done. Now, maybe after 10 o'clock I wasn't as disciplined, but that's neither here nor there.
Good stuff.
So I looked at it about 6-7 times, and I'd seen Padraic's comments in the press conference where he was concentrating on Comer being pushed. Absolutely not. So this is how it played out. I'll give you the detail, and you can dive in. So the Kerry defender is coming out. Comer goes after him, and a brilliant steal. He knocks the ball clean out of his hand. Brilliant tackle. And the ball is there for him to pick up, but he makes a hames at picking it up. He stumbles over the pickup. That's what Padraic thought was the push. There's nobody pushes him. And now he's not in control of the ball. A Kerry boot goes in and pokes it forward, but he pokes it straight to a Galway man. And then that Galway defender, whose name has just gone from me now, he decides to pass it back with a fist pass to John Daly. Now, this is where it gets tricky. As John Daly is coming to receive a very straightforward, simple fist pass, he slips. So by the time he doesn't fully slip, he kind of a knee slips, and when he gets up to his height, he has no forward momentum because Spillane has filled the space, and he goes in with the straight arm out, and now Daly cannot break the tackle, and he can't get forward momentum. It's almost like, the rugby, the scrum goes the other way if you can't get a nudge. And I'm pretty sure John unfortunately panics. I'm not getting any momentum here. I'll caught for an overcarry, and he did the old cornerback man on it, grabbed it, and I do
the old James McCarthy, if you don't mind.
In commentary before we saw that replay. Yeah,
well,
there you go. I mean, we were all good at it. We were all good at it in our day if you needed to. But I think my sense is that Sean Hurson got it absolutely 100% correct. Now, here, and I'm telling you, last night we were having a beer. Jim McGuinness was in our company, and he was completely the other side of the argument. So there you go.
So that argument didn't end quickly then, I don't think, because I can't imagine Jim accepted your point of view on it.
No, I had to back off.
Well, it was a key. It was a key moment, and I think
he converted it. You see, that's what made it the key moment.
Yeah. He converted it.
If Hecker had missed it had blown over.
It wasn't an easy free, by the way.
And he was pulled back. Did you notice that? The linesman said, "Back here, buddy." And he kept him on the 13. He didn't let him out to the 20 for the wider angle. So he did the most acute of angles. And wow,
what did you think, Mick? What do you think, Mick? Free in or free out?
I thought at the time it was a free in. My initial reaction was like Kevin. The pushing it back didn't occur to me at the time. It just didn't occur to me. Like you said, actually what occurred to me was what a great steal from Damien Comer. And then I actually said to the fellow, "That's some steal." The guy was like, "That was some steal." And the next thing he started falling over, and I was like, "Oh, I'm after cursing him now." And it transpired.
I think he went for a jab lift, Mick. Do you know that?
He did. Yeah, he did.
And he missed it, and he jabbed the ground and tumbled over.
That's exactly. It was again, but you know what? Again, it's just those. Jesus, just being in an All-Ireland final and just doing the brilliant basics, that little, get over the ball. Just get over the ball and draw the free,
Get up and draw free, yeah.
But anyway, what actually occurred to me as possibly was the issue, and obviously it wasn't, how Killian Spillane went in with the straight arm. He got it, it was fine. but it could have.
That's where Jim was saying he thought the arm was a bit high, but I didn't think that. Now, really,
I think it was fine at the time. I looked in real time to me. I thought, Jesus, that could have been a foul. But when you looked at the replay after, whatever they showed, it was fine. Certainly John Daly had him. The old corner forward trick. No, the corner back. It's the old corner forward trick to pull your arm in. I thought it was a free. I could totally, if you're Padraic Joyce at ground level and you're looking across a thicket of bodies and you see him go over, I can see exactly.
It's 100 yards. It's 100 meters away from.
Yeah, I can see why. I'm sure when he sees it, he'll know. But yeah, but look at that was only half the job.
What did you think? What did you think, lads? Did you think it was a foul or?
I thought it was soft enough now, but I wouldn't be as I'd be a naive young fella. I wouldn't be aware of these tactics that you corner forwards / cornerbacks would engage in, you know.
I'd just wave play on.
That's it.
Nothing to do with me. Keep going.
And you know, if he did this gas thing about it, fellas, this where maybe experience comes in. If he had given a free out to Galway, there wouldn't have been boo about it.
No.
Because
it was a brave call.
Kerry guys would say, well, we were in to stop him and play, and it wouldn't even be a talking point. But when it went the other way and was converted, then the game swung viciously.
I would say, Rory, I was a little bit surprised. No, not that he's like some kind of above the fray. I was a little bit surprised Joyce made quite such an issue of it. He did. It seemed in every interview he did, he kind of raised it as an issue, and I don't know, like, not that he should go, lose gracefully, blah, blah, blah. It just, to me, it was a little bit of surprise that Padraic Joyce kind of after losing, I know it was like a pivotal moment, but when he lost by 4 points, that he made such a big deal of it, I was a little bit surprised.
Yeah, but look, you wouldn't know who's in his ear now either as well at the same time before he goes into these types of press conferences and ends up saying stuff that I'd say maybe today, when on reflection might go, oh, look, but them's the breaks. Like that, this is what happens in All-Ireland finals.
That's what I've never lost an All-Ireland final, so I don't know.
Yeah,
he's been human.
It's human. It's human.
I couldn't fault him for that, Mikey.
No, Mick, that's what surprises me, because this is Padraic Joyce. He's kind of got a slightly godlike demeanour at times. You know that he would lower himself into the fray.
Competitive. He'd bait you for a marble. Will you stop it? Ultra competitive.
It's the burning desire when he was in an All-Ireland final. I mean, that man is born to win. Like, I mean, even in Galway's worst days, when he was playing, he would believe Galway would win a game if he was involved in it, and that's not an arrogance. That's just a complete conviction.
They generally did, by the way.
Yeah, they did. What a guy! No, it's. I mean, I put it this way: I'd far prefer to see him reacting that way than sitting staring at the wall, going, "Yeah, right. These things happen."
We didn't get one Yera. We got no Yeras yesterday, which was great. Actually, it was a Yera free zone.
I mentioned him at the start in kind of the. Kevin, in relation to kind of the final for the water carriers, I think he deserves a special mention. I was just so taken by Stephen O'Brien's performance yesterday. Thought he was magnificent. It was like if Paul Galvin delivered that performance 10-15 years ago, like, it'd be singing about it from the mountaintops. I'd say Stephen O'Brien is underrated, but he just did everything.
I'll tell you a good story. He was like he's an unsung hero on that team, and I'll tell you a good story. This is true, fellas. I mixed up. Was it the Kerry Mayo League match or the Kerry Dublin League match down in Tralee? We did both of them, Rory, if my memory. Yeah. Well, we did, because I was down there, and I wouldn't have been down there otherwise. And on the Sunday, there were Saturday night matches, horrible wet nights again as usual. But anyway, on the Sunday morning, we were going for some breakfast in a hotel in Tralee town. And I met him at the foyer with his partner, and I think he might have got a couple of minutes the night before, or no minutes, but not much of a show anyway. And I was chatting to him, and there is that kind of idea of a veteran about him at this stage, and was he hanging around the panel? And he felt he could only improve, and he was going to keep at it and see could he knock another big season out of it. And he was well down the pecking order. That's the point I'm making. At that stage, in I guess it was February, March period, and he had a lot to do. But his approach, even back then, was I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna make it difficult for Jack, and I want to get on the team, and I don't want to be a bit player and all that. And then he turns in. I've obviously managed and coached against him, and one of the things we're always saying to the defenders is, you have to stand off him. Because if you come in close, he wriggles, he ducks down, and he goes in under your oxter. and it's very hard to get a tackle against him. And Dara was calling him the Wriggler yesterday. You know, he kind of, he's very elusive when he does a kind of little shimmy and he puts the head down.
Yeah.
And he contributes all the time. And he's a nice scorer as well. That's a part of his game people miss. And if he gets it open, he's not shy about putting a curler over the bar. And he always contributes. That's my sense when he plays for the Kingdom. He's a net contributor all the time, isn't he?
Absolutely.
He always seems to get a job done. And as I say, I'm a big fan of his. I think he's a great bit of stuff.
What a block on Conroy.
Well, Roy, I was saying in the the ratings yesterday. The Conroy one is the one that will be replayed for years because the Father Ted connotations. It's kind of funny and everything else, and he obviously nearly broke Conroy's foot. But the block on Heaney was arguably more important, and
probably saved the goal.
If you look at definitely. If you look at there was a photograph taken as well that catches the moment of impact when he makes the block, and it's actually
which one, Mick?
The Johnny Heaney one. So it's right in on goal. It's actually the outside of O'Brien's arm it hits. So it's not a textbook block. He just flings himself in front of it. You know, it's an amazing block.
Yeah, amazing. No, he was something else. While we're mentioning individual performances, then I think like Walsh and Clifford rightly getting the headlines, Kevin, but Killian McDade, that second half, it was kind of a strength of will scenario kind of thing, wasn't it? It was almost like this guy was like, oh, well, you know, my partner isn't having his best days. Like Conroy looked like he might have been carrying a knocker. He wasn't quite right, and McDade just kind of grabbed affairs by the scruff of the neck, and not in the first half when Galway, he was grand in the first half, not in the first half when they were having the better of it. It was in the second half when they were kind of beginning to take on water, and he was single-handedly keeping them in it there for a stage.
And again, Killian McDade has been a slow burner. I came across him maybe 3-4 years ago in an FBD match. He played number 10 right out forward up in Kiltoom in an out run-of-the-mill FBD game. And I remember saying to the guys, Jesus, that fella number 10 is a queer player. We're going to have to keep an eye on him. And then someone said, hey, he's Australia, back from Australia. He's with Carlton, I think, over there. And you could see the athleticism immediately. But he needed to tidy up the skills a small bit. Now, yesterday, interestingly, Mikey, 3 in the second, 1 in the first, 3 in the second. But he could have added another 2. He had 2 that swung to the left. And again, you have to give massive credit, if you look back at them, to the Kerry defenders, just as he's kicking for those points, that dive across him into his eye line and force him to hook the shot a bit higher, and it moves to the left. So he could have not easily, that's the wrong word. He could have potentially scored 6 points from play yesterday, which would have been an incredible contribution from a midfielder.
What a fella to build a team around for the next 10 years. I mean, I know people will talk about Walsh and Comer, but look, they're heading towards 30. This guy's only 24. And to find a fella with that sort of athleticism that can get...
he's probably a 10, Rory, really. That's his position, 10 or 12.
But also, like, the kind of leadership qualities he has are astonishing. As if you, like, the scores he got were clutch scores yesterday, like when they really needed scores, like they're the really hard ones because the pressure is on. Even if you go back to, we'll say, the Armagh quarter final, it was, you know, like they had thrown away a terrible lead, had gotten dragged into extra time, conceded an early goal in extra time. It was McDade who again dragged them out of a burning furnace, you know, like he got the goal. I think he might have got it. I think he got the equaliser to get the extra time. I think he got the equalising goal after that. You know, like I would have him. Now, obviously, Clifford will get Player of the Year, but McDade, for me, should be a racing certainty as a nominee at the very, very least.
By the way, John Daly, lads, yesterday was another big player in that final.
Yeah, he's been so good all year. I think he's been. I mean,
the pass he gave early on, Mick, for the well, maybe it was the Heaney goal chance, but one of them he gave a pass, just split the defense with a magnificent left-footed pass. I think it was the Heaney goal chance, actually.
It was the Heaney goal chance,
right.
That was his pass.
He was doing. He was at the same crack against Derry. Like he's just. He's been hugely impressive to me anyway all year. He's the all-star centre back to me.
Yeah, I picked him on my team of the year, but I don't. Did he make it? I don't think.
No, James McCarthy made it, which is kind of might be the decision out of that team that has most people scratching their heads, because James McCarthy played one game of football, basically, I suppose, whereas John Daly was consistently excellent for the All-Ireland finalists.
James, you shouldn't have heroes when you're in your late 40s. But James McCarthy is my hero, right?
Yeah.
I was only over in Swords. I was only over in Swords there last week, and he's working in Swords now. And I was just walking down the main street, and
following him.
Yeah, he was sitting outside. He was sitting outside having a coffee, and I was just like, I was starstruck, like, So nobody loves James McCarthy more than me, but James shouldn't have been on that team.
He's terrific. Yeah. But normally we get maybe 13, 14 consistently correct.
It's hard. It's very, very hard.
Like the night of the final, it's a quick pick.
Very hard.
And then when you compare it to the All-Stars who have a month or whatever to reflect, the strike rate has been historically very good for the Sunday game show. But methinks, Rory, that it won't be close. It'll be lucky to beat the 12 this year. Because there will be changes that team of the year. I don't see that is the All-Star.
No, I think there's but as you said, I think you could go picking it now, and you're the worst kind of Monday morning quarterback, because I've been in the office when that team's being picked, and I can see Des, throwing sandwiches at the wall and throwing chairs at Kieran Whelan and stuff. Like, it gets heated. It does get heated.
It does get heated.
So we weren't there, man. We don't know how it went down.
We don't know. You weren't there.
Mick, a word on Jack O'Connor, I think, kind of needs to be mentioned. Like, this is the kind of this is a unique inter-county management career now. 4 All-Irelands in 3 different spells, 100% strike rate of league and All-Ireland in his first year of each 3 spells. And last night it was interesting, just with Marty and Joanne's interviews in the team hotel. They were obviously consciously wanting to ask about Jack O'Connor. Every player got a question about Jack O'Connor. And I think every one of them just mentioned man management, like that's what he's really good at, I guess. And you might think this Kerry team, this is Kerry. They don't need the hand around the shoulder. They don't need to be told how great they are. But this is a very talented group of players who won everything underage. But in the last 3 years, have been hit with some sickening defeats. So I think Jack O'Connor was just the man to come in and tell them how great they all were and give them a kick up the arse when it was needed.
There might be a little bit more to it than that, but yeah, it was interesting actually the last couple of weeks. I just the way the coverage broke for us. I spent more time kind of in Kerry and kind of talking to people in Kerry more so maybe than Galway in the run up to the final, and it was very interesting just to see how Jack was. I was down at the press day last Wednesday week, and it was very interesting to see how they were playing that day and how Jack was. So, like, in my head, Kerry hadn't, they've won 1 All-Ireland in 13 years. 8 years was the 3rd longest run Kerry have ever had without an All-Ireland, which is nothing to most of us, but the way it is now. So, it was interesting that Jack and Mike Quirk was there and Diarmuid Murphy, and they all spoke about how chilled out and how relaxed and how everything was cool and everything was good. And I was kind of thinking, I'm sure it is, because when you're in the bubble, it's totally different. And, they know how to handle it. I mean, those guys, I think between Diarmuid and Michael alone, they've been involved in 17 All-Ireland finals before yesterday. So they know how to handle these things. But it was interesting to hear Jack talk at that point. He was saying he was enjoying it more than he ever did before. He was insisting this is the most enjoyable stint I've had. And he was projecting this sense of enjoyment, and it's great to be here and all of that. And it just struck me that here's a guy he was also talking about being a different manager, a different kind of manager than he was before, being able to delegate more, not taking on as much. That obviously the job had even expanded since the last time he was there, so he had to. But he had the faith. He has this dual quality at the moment. It would appear of having the faith to find the right people to fill the ancillary jobs that he wants done, but also the conviction at the top of it all to know what he wants it to look like at the end. And I think that was reflected at halftime yesterday. I'm not sure another manager without the pedigree and without the record that Jack has would have made those 2 changes so fast at halftime. I'm not sure. Not sure they would, with the conviction that he did. And the other thing that came out to me, and this is Jack as well, that came across to me in the last couple of weeks coming up to the game, was 2 names, Paddy Talley and Tony Griffin, kept coming back and back and back. And like performance coaches in Kerry, when Jack was the first time around in the early 90s, he brought in a performance coach. And I tell you now, being a performance coach going into a Kerry squad It's not. That's not a done deal. Like, I mean, it's not. Number one, you go in knowing it's not going to work for everybody, and number two, another cohort are going to have to be convinced, and then there is another cohort that will go with it from the get go, and that's great. But you're selling yourself. You really have to sell what you're selling, like, you know, and you really have to find a connection. And Tony Griffin clearly did, and you could see it coming down the stretch now in 2 matches, the 2 big games of the year. They had it coming down the stretch, and then the Paddy Tally side of it. You know, Jack was never afraid to go to the north for advice and for ideas, and a man, from what I understand, would consult widely anyway about how things are and so on and so forth. But the tally thing, lads, I mean, how that was translated in Kerry in the lead in, because again, the classic thing, Mick O'Dwyer always said it to the great team. He said, lads, it's not 31 counties coming after us at all, it's 31 and a half. And Jack would have had that at the start of the year as well. And the tally thing would have amplified that. Bringing Paddy Tally in, and I know this, would have been translated in some conversations in Kerry as the final concession, like the final yielding of the Kerry ideal, you know, to have to bring in an Ulster coach to coach them how to defend. You can't imagine how badly that would have gone, or backfired even if they had lost, right? Not in you know, rational thinking circles, right? Because you would have done it. But like, it would have backfired. It would have been a reaction, no doubt. But
where would you find one of those circles, Mike?
I'll bring you down for a spin someday, and I'll bring you into a few. But like what I'm saying, I suppose, in a roundabout way, is that it's conviction, which, like, he knew what he wanted. He knew the right guys to bring in. He wasn't afraid to let them at it and trust them. And it all came back in spades then, because he picked the absolutely right guys to do the job. And Kerry County Board in the start of, remember the storms that whipped up when he was given the job. 31 and a half counties, lads. 31 and a half counties.
Yeah, it is, Kevin. I think Mick has summed it up wonderfully there, and your insight into it, obviously, as a man who's held that position in Roscommon, is interesting, because to me it seems that Jack O'Connor he's one of these kind of force of nature personalities, and sometimes you're lucky with a force of nature personality where you know that actually I'm a force of nature. I don't need to impose myself on everything here, or I don't need to try to, because actually it just happens naturally. So, you know, if it's my idea, I don't need to be the person carrying it out, shall we speak, because it was still my idea, and I'm Jack O'Connor, and I'm in charge here. And there must be incredible self-confidence there, because as Mick says, he's delegated a lot to very talented people, very, very talented people who could take a lot more credit, you know, in another situation. But at the end of the day, everybody knows, no, Jack O'Connor's the boss. It was all his idea.
Well, I got a taste of that very early in the season myself. He rang me. I'd been on a podcast, or maybe the League Sunday or whatever, and his exit from Kildare and the manner of it, etc. And I think I might have said it was unseemly haste or something. Anyway, I can't remember. But the phrase. But he took exception to it and rang me directly, which says a lot about the guy, I have to say. And we had a great chat about it, and he felt very, I think, was he in a podcast or something where he talked about Manchester United or something?
It was on with the Examiner with Paul Rouse, yeah.
And there might have been another bit of context lost in some interview we did or whatever. And he was adamant that the true narrative was not out there, and we chatted it through. But he was very, very keen to make sure that his coming was going to get off to a strong start, that this thing was going to be put behind him very quickly. And he was dealing with the people he needed to deal with, and he saw me perhaps as someone that didn't have all the facts, shall we say? And I was happy to hear him out. But Jack is, Jack is just fantastic credibility in the game, because he knows the game. He's just. So I heard David Moore last night said he is a high sporting IQ. You know, he sees things, he understands the game. He's been around it a long time. He has such experiences, good and bad. He's had a few bumps along the way, but he's an outstanding inter-county manager who's just a serial winner. You listed it there yourself, Mikey. You know, like beware of his first year in the job, because he just plows down everything in front of him. And I think it's a really good message to a lot of teams out there, you know, who kind of say, oh, we don't need to do the league and we'll take our eye off this and our eye off that. Get your team down quick, get it settled, get to know who you have, stay with it, and don't change too much and keep plowing. And the new championship that's ahead of us is going to be very much like that. And you can see Jack will hit the ground running in that as well, because he's a young team now. I'm sure that he must feel can exploit the ground ahead.
Like the amount of time he's been there, lads. See, like the senior All Ireland is only the tip of the iceberg, you know, with this manager. Like he was a selector. He was an under-21 selector with Paddy O'Shea, God rest him, in 1996. Like he managed Diarmuid Murphy as an under-21. Never mind the senior. When you start adding up colleges, All Irelands, under-21s, and so on and so forth.
The minors,
absolutely. I don't want to put a number on it, but you're heading towards 20 finals. You're definitely heading towards 20. So I mean, serial winner, high sporting IQ.
What have you not come across in like, you've seen everything, haven't you?
And you think of the Kerry context. He came in the first time around with, you know, he would have been seen as the outside man because he didn't have the All Ireland medals. He was fighting all that for, whether it was in his own head or in reality. He was fighting all that for years as well. So as you say, there's nothing on the field or psychologically that he hasn't dealt with as a manager. And like, you know, they knew what they were. Look at, it's like anything. If they hadn't won, if Galway had turned it over, that's the thing. Like that's the fine lines in Kerry. Like, and Kevin, it reminds me of something. I don't know, was it in your Irish Times column or there was something you said on this about, you know, you can't always judge a season by the end game. You know, you have to look at it in the totality of what it is.
The recency thing, I was talking about that to everyone.
Yes.
We haven't the concentration levels of a week in any of us. You know?
Exactly. So, I mean, in the Kerry context of that, Kerry lose on Sunday, lads. I mean, that win over Dublin becomes a glimmer in the distance, like the light, you know, it's a glimmer in the distance. So you're constantly, and that's what makes them great, but that's also what pulls you, can just wreck your season.
Yeah.
What he's done, I mean, I think they used 24 players in the championship before yesterday, which is not a lot.
No.
When you think about it, and the league numbers are not high either. He did the Cody thing, the old Brian Cody thing. You get the jersey day one, and it's yours until you get injured or you lose it from form. But it's yours if you have it day one. You know, I think Jason Foley started all the matches this year. Bruno Begley started 12.
He put out a McGrath Cup team early doors. Yeah, and probably 10 of yesterday's team or 11 of yesterday's team was on.
As you say, he laid it down because that's what they needed to do. They were proving themselves from day one this
year. Yeah. Rory, there's often a rush after an All-Ireland final to, as it's along with not having the attention span of a gnat or more than a week, as Kevin says. We also like to always say that whoever is strongest now is going to be strong. Like, is this the start of a dynasty? Yada yada yada, and that's often said with Kerry, no more than anybody, especially after, you know, they're after standing by as their biggest rivals did build a dynasty that lasted longer than any other one has ever lasted. But it's hard to make that case for Kerry at the moment because it does seem, as we kind of alluded to early in the podcast, like Gaelic football's in a good place. There are, you know, Galway will come back the stronger for this, you'd imagine, you know, if they can add, as the lad said, add a couple to their bench. You know, Derry and Armagh will be coming out of Ulster saying, you know, we're a year wiser as well. The Dubs obviously haven't gone away. Like, and we're looking at a new championship structure next year. Thankfully, we're looking at a new championship structure where we can actually say there's might be 2, 3, 4 realistic All-Ireland champions or contenders, as opposed to a new championship structure coming in when the Dubs are steamrolling everyone and we're trying our best to make a case for somebody else. So Gaelic football is in a good place. Kerry are kingpins, but they're there to be knocked off.
Absolutely. I think there's a democracy in Gaelic football. No, it's not like a mass democracy, but there is a bit more of a democracy in Gaelic football that maybe hasn't been for a while. And while previous Kerry teams, when they finally kind of get that first one off their, when they get that first one notched on the trophy up into the cabinet, I think they have tended to go on and, you know, contest, but and win multiples. That's not a gimme or a certainty or a guarantee with this team, because they will, even in Dublin's 10-year dominance. Kerry were still making All-Ireland finals and semi-finals. Kerry will never exit the conversation at any stage whatsoever. What they might have now is an opportunity to put maybe 3 or 4 over the next 6 or 7 years together. But they'll actually have it all to do just to retain it in 2023. Like they have flaws, and that's kind of what makes the Gaelic Football Championship, again, when we finally do, when the thing kicks back in next year, I think it's going to be interesting, because your chasing pack will have a good opportunity and will have plenty of time to get themselves sorted out. I think there's going to be new managers in Mayo. There's going to be new management in Dublin, potentially. That's the word we're hearing. You're seeing change right across the board. Monaghan, Donegal, and look, you would imagine Armagh will improve from the positions they found themselves in this year. It'll be interesting to see if Joyce continues. I hope he does. And I don't see any reason why he wouldn't, because Galway can certainly build on it, and they have a lot of good underage players coming through as well. So they could certainly add a bit more depth, which is the one thing I think that did catch them yesterday. So I think there is the potential for this new format as well to make things very, very interesting. And it's not an absolute certainty that David Clifford is going to go on and win 5 All-Ireland medals, but I think they're going to need to probably find a replacement for David Moran. That's going to be a big issue. Now, look, Stefan Okonbor, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, might be the solution there. Obviously, he picked up a really bad injury this year and might need a bit more football, because he was another Australian Rules Project player and has come back. Really good athlete. And I'm sure, look, if he gets a bit more football, he could solve that. He might be a potential solution there. But they do have flaws still right throughout the team, and they didn't win any of their matches, even Mayo, right? And let's be honest, Mayo, the lift is probably coming down a little bit now as opposed to going up. But Mayo right with them right into the middle of that second half, and then just, the Kerry pulled away. So I think if Mayo can get the right management on board and inject a couple of young players into their team as well, find another couple of Lee Keegans, which they seem to be able to do quite easily in Mayo for some reason. You just wouldn't know. So I don't see it as being a green and gold future completely, but they will probably be in a lot of All-Ireland finals over the next 6 or 7 years, and they will probably win 2 or 3 more.
Yeah. Kevin, I suppose the last word on the football championship to you. I get the impression you're heartened by how things are looking, and you'd be kind of, enthusiastic about next year's championship as well. And there's intrigue and storylines and plots, and sure, that's all we need, really, isn't it?
Well, I think I'm not going to go into the detail of the championship. I think we all have a rough idea of how it pans, but by my reckoning, between the league, the province, and the round robins, and then into the All-Ireland series, the top teams will meet each other possibly 3 times, which is what we've always wanted. Big games between the big teams, and the new championship absolutely assures that. And it's going to be terrific. And the way it's designed, as I see it, the top 8, top 10 teams are going to make the All-Ireland series. In other words, the quarterfinals, if you like. And that's just going to be fantastic. It's a crazy season, in that once the ball is thrown in on the last Sunday in January, it's pedal to the floor to the 3rd week in July. And you're going to, you talked about Galway there and the likes of them. You have to develop a panel now for this journey. There's no breaks, from league to province, I think it's 2 weeks, and from perhaps province to round robin another week, and then from round robin to the provincial series perhaps another week again, or to the All-Ireland series another week again. So it's so much to look forward to. I think it's all GA people should say, yeah, maybe we've gone well down the road. It is the first step, but we've gone well down the road to what this new championship we all want might look like. And certainly, I think it's for all of us. It's very exciting.
We'll leave that for football. Just a quick word, Mick, because since our last podcast, obviously Brian Cody in true hurling man fashion, tried to steal the
day
thunder.
before. Brilliant.
Steal the thunder of
What a
the All
move.
Ireland
What
football
a
final.
move.
That's
Classy guy. I love it.
Stuck a pin in the football.
yeah. It was the most. In the end, we shouldn't have doubted it. It was the most Brian Cody way to go. Like, no fanfare, just a statement from Kilkenny County Board. We'll never hear from Brian Cody again now, unless you might see him sitting in the stand at Kilkenny matches.
There'll be
and
no
Stevens matches.
There'll certainly be no fireside chats with Marty anyway.
And there'll be no press conference in a theatre in Kilkenny or anything like that, a la Henry Shefflin. He's gone now, but it was there was a certain gauche style to how he went, I think, Mick, wasn't there?
As someone who's worked for a Sunday newspaper for a long time, I could tell you exactly how that was going to work out from about, I think the rumour started on the Tuesday afternoon, and we were saying, that's going to happen now, either Saturday afternoon or 25 minutes past 3 on Sunday, one or the other, because they're the dormant times, but they're also the times that absolutely wreck your weekend. So, so in true fashion, yeah. Look, that's it. Look, he went out probably exactly the way that he would have wished. I'd say no. There was a wondering in me, wondering will he pop up with James Stephens, somewhere along the way. He's not. I mean, as we've seen and as we know, he is very much a traditionalist. It's impossible to imagine him managing anywhere else.
No,
certainly in the county, no way. And even in the club context, I don't think that man would shift beyond the village. So I'd be curious to see will he throw his lot in there at some point. But sure, look, what can you say about it? So it's all been said. I mean, the greatest, certainly the greatest hurling manager of all time. I would say probably the greatest GA manager of all time. Really, when you really start to drill down into it.
I think it would be
transformative effect on the sport.
You wouldn't make the kind of Rory. You wouldn't make the kind of documentary you made about Mick O'Dwyer, about Brian Cody. Very different character, but at the same time, yeah, as Mick says, I couldn't argue with Mick's point. I would say the greatest GA manager of all time.
Yeah, look, unquestioned, legendary figure. Like, when the history of hurling eventually gets documented, when Farmageddon ever arrives, heaven forbid, Brian Cody's presence and silhouette will loom large across it, because he's just been a totemic figure in the game. I think it's look, what can you say that hasn't already been said in terms of his achievements, both as a player and as a manager? It's almost superfluous at this stage. There's two things I'd say on this that I think are key, though. The first thing is, it's a really difficult situation for the Kilkenny County Board, because they haven't had to do this in 24 years. Like, that's a quarter of a century since you've last appointed a manager. Now, look, invariably,
they haven't been out in the internet dating age yet. Tinder is a completely new thing to them.
Swipe right for Kilkenny manager,
Mightn't be that difficult, Rory.
No.
Just have to go to Galway and sort things out.
Yeah. well, I mean, they have plenty of internal candidates as well. Derek Ling did an incredible job this year. They're under 20s, winning an All Ireland, maybe against the head, because Limerick were hotly fancied to win that final. But and look, you've Eddie, you've David Herity, James McGarry's already there, Gerta, so they've plenty.
Mick Fennelly.
There's loads. Like, they won't be found wanting for somebody to take over the team, and I wouldn't be surprised actually if Cody is a big say in who it is. But the second point, sorry, Kev, point that I would make is just, and I do think this I think this would be important. Mick was mentioning, what will he do now? If I was the Kilkenny County Board, and if I was in any way influential figure in a hurling fraternity, I would be saying, put him in as a politician, insofar as get him in there as Kilkenny Central Council delegate. Because I think the point Donald Cusack made last Sunday night on the Sunday game, which I think is a very important one, who's watching the back of hurling in the corridors of power? I'm not so sure if there's many. I have always felt, and a lot of people would feel, that it's basically the Gaelic Football Association with a hurling wing. And I think if you have somebody of the stature and of the presence and of the force of personality as Brian Cody in there, I think it could be a very significant political move on behalf of the small ball.
Can I tell you,
Mr. Cody goes to Washington. Go on, Kev.
Can I tell you a quick one, Mikey? And far be it from me not to be an expert on Brian Cody's achievements, but when I was looking after Bridget's maybe eight or 9 years ago, and we were having a meeting and a workshop actually, where we wanted to have a few mantras or whatever and the idea was, we decide on them together, and then we'd get them printed up and they'd be put in the dressing room. Teamwork, hard work, the usual ones yourselves. But there was one I had read Cody at the time. Or one of his, has he a few autobiographies? I think Cody.
No, he's only one. He only did one, yeah.
And I remember the central theme of his dressing room and what he was. It always struck me, and it was one we ended up agreeing on the panel, and I remember, and obviously we got it made up with one of the professional sign guides, and it was absence of ego, honesty of effort. That to me was Brian Cody. Anytime I ever met him, only met him 3 or 4 times, he always came across the most honest of guy, an absence of ego, just single focus on winning, addicted to winning. And I've always tried to drive that in any teams that I've been involved in. That I remember him saying, the dressing room, you'd imagine everybody in that dressing room would be on the same journey, but of course they're not. Other fellas are on, everyone is different, but he had to bend them that there would be that the cancer of me could not enter the dressing room, and it was this honesty of effort, absence of ego, and that's what when I think of Cody and everything he did. They're the 2 phrases that come to mind.
Yeah, well, enjoy your retirement, Brian Cody, and all the sideline reporters will also enjoy his retirement. They don't have to interview Brian Cody after defeat anymore or ask him about shaking hands with Henry Sheffield. Damien Lawler, like, I was just a relief, just like
it's going to be an incredible amount of new faces on all the sidelines.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting little merry-go-round now for a little while. Okay, we'll leave it at that. Thank you, Kev. Thank you, Mick. Thank you, Rory, as always. And we'll be back on Thursday to have a look at the All-Ireland Women's Football Final. So we will chat to you then. Good luck. Thank you. Goodbye.
From this, how much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it.